Welcome to the Love How Deep podcast with Brian and Heather Mayer. Our purpose is to equip married couples like you with resources that rely on the transformative power of God's Word to strengthen your relationship.
Hi there. Welcome back to another episode of Love How Deep. We are super excited that you have joined us today. As always, we thank you so much. We could not do this podcast without you. And we are talking about a subject that is near and dear to probably all of our hearts. And we are going to be talking about finances today. A little bit about money, right?
A fun subject.
Yeah, and it affects all of us.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't really do life without money.
No, we really can't.
That's for sure.
And I would say that is a big topic that so many couples fight over and are divided over and can get themselves into so much trouble because their finances, they're not on the same page with the finances. So this is a good one.
Yep, that's right. And a lot of people will ask us, they'll say, hey, what do you think the number one reason that couples divorce or break up? And is it finances? And the answer is kind of yes and no.
Right.
It's yes, because that's a lot of times the thing on the surface that people get upset by. But I think when you dig down underneath that all, it's usually something that's a little bit more deeper. But
right.
It's definitely, there's an impact. And I think one of the things, if you want to just jump right into it,
I do,
is that we need to talk a little bit about our childhoods, because that's where our feelings about money begin, right?
That's absolutely right. And you may not even realize where your thoughts and opinions come from in regards to money. And so, Brian, I like what you said a minute ago about digging down deeper. When couples are, wondering what is the big cause of divorce, is it money? Well, we do have to go deeper than that. And so this definitely plays into your background and how did you view money in your, as a child growing up. Were your parents spenders? Were they savers? Were they well off? Or did you, were you living on food stamps or somewhere in the middle? We all grew up somewhere on that sort of spectrum of food stamps with nothing to everything lavish and lovely. So, it's good to have a conversation like that with your spouse to kind of understand how money was viewed growing up. And it's not like your parents would have had conversations with you about money, but I guess really it's just, how did you grow up and how did you view money? Was it readily available or were you constantly saving? Did you grow up in a family that was in debt? And, for us, you and I grew up pretty much the same way with money being tight. My dad at one time while he was in school working a couple of jobs. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, of course, until dad went back to school. So then she had to go to work as well. And so, I definitely remember, especially I guess as a teenager, living with parents who both worked and money was so tight and comments were made, as mom's doing the budget, she's making comments about how we don't have money for X, Y, Z. And so, I grew up that way. I grew up understanding how the dollar works. And as an adult, and let me back up a second. And you grew up pretty much the same way. But as an adult, we came to view that a little differently. For me, I am a big saver, yet I'm also a spender. And if I have the money, I want to go ahead and get it. Versus you want to save for a rainy day. And I'm like, yeah, but we don't have to continue to live with something that's 30 years old. We can replace it and it's okay. So that's always a fun conversation to have. You're shaking your head no at me. But it's understanding where we came from and having a good, healthy conversation with your spouse about that, to understand your differences of why one of you might want to go spend a little bit more and one of you doesn't want to, and what does that mean, and what would it look like if you were in debt or if you did have some, a windfall or whatever. Just have those conversations with each other and understand each other just a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and I will say that you and I, even though our childhoods were very similar about money, obviously your parents were married mine were divorced, and I remember some very contentious arguments over money. And I mean, even though your parents were married, I'm sure there were times where they probably argued about money, just like everybody does.
I'm sure.
But I don't know what it was about my situation, but there was this like anxiety in the air about, we're potentially not going to have enough money, and my parents again arguing about it, and me feeling like kind of maybe, am I the reason for this? Am I the problem? If it weren't for me, would they not really argue about this? So I think I, for some reason, had some anxiety about money. And so I think that's where my ridiculousness comes from, always wanting to save. And yeah, I know it is. So it's easy to talk about it in situations like this. And then you're like, okay, can you feel the same way when we're getting ready to spend money? And,
awesome.
Yeah.
When I approach something that, I would like or would want to do.
Yeah. Right.
Always fun.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So,
anyway, so Brian,
right.
what have you got? You got anything else?
We want to make sure that we establish common financial goals. And I love that we're talking about this now because we have been in this series of blog posts all about goals.
Yes.
And at the time that this is going to be published, we're going to probably have about 4 blog posts out there that talk about goals. One of them talks about financial goals. We're calling it 101, 201, 301, 401, and I believe 301 is the one on finances.
301.
Yeah, I believe it is, and I will link to it in the show notes.
I wrote it and I can't remember.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
I think it's 301, yes.
Yeah, and I will link to that in the show notes. And so financial goals, obviously, are incredibly important. And, I think it's much easier to have common financial goals when you communicate with each other, which I'm giving away one down here a little bit further, but obviously we're going to talk about communication a lot, but it's really all about dreaming together and planning together. Obviously the planning is probably the more boring things, like, we got to make sure we have enough money for, what if the car breaks down next month? Let's make sure we have a little bit of an emergency fund for that. Yes. Or in dreaming, obviously, would be like, hey, I want to go on a weekend getaway with you.
Right.
And so that's a part of the dreaming. So.
Right. But maybe that weekend getaway, when you're on the same page and you're looking at your finances, maybe that weekend getaway is you lock the doors and you have a staycation and just focus on each other. So, yeah. And, I will say Proverbs is a huge sort of backbone chapter in the Bible, or book, I should say, for this episode. Absolutely.
And I would encourage you, the listener, just to read all of Proverbs. And aren't there 31 chapters in Proverbs? I believe there are. I think that's correct. And so, because a lot of times we'll have, I'll hear pastors talk about, hey, just read one chapter in Proverbs every day of the month, and then the next month start it over. But Proverbs 16:3 says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. So obviously keeping him at the center and always praying to him as a couple, and he will not steer you wrong. He will show you the best path to take, financially speaking. So
right.
Yep.
Right. And part of that, like with creating financial goals or discovering financial goals that you have together, is creating a budget. And that is a word that nobody really likes to hear. I don't think creating a budget is enjoyable at all, yet we need to live on a budget. I mean, I remember when I was single and I had a mountain of debt and I was making pennies with a house payment and a car that was breaking down all the time. I literally had to count every penny that I got. Like I had to have that budget, and I knew after all my bills were paid, literally had $40 left to my name until a month later when I got paid again. It was rough. It was really rough, but I had to have that budget. If I did not have it, I would probably be in debt. I would be out on the street. I don't know, Brian, where would you find me? On the street somewhere saying, hey, yeah, you want a date? Sure. So
do you know how my attraction for you increased?
Oh my gosh.
So I'll be real quick.
Quick.
You wanted me to help you do your taxes. And so we went to the library. Yes. This was in Florida. And sat down at the kiddie table, right, with the little tiny chairs.
Yep, Kendra was checking out books, and you were doing my taxes.
I'm surprised that the librarian didn't come over and say, okay, this is for kids only. What are you doing over here? But anyway, when I discovered how much you made and that the fact that you were somehow making a house payment and taking care of all your bills, I was like, wow, this girl has it together. And, you weren't super wealthy. You weren't wealthy at all.
No.
But I didn't care about that. It was like, wow, you said a lot about your character.
That's very
Anyway,
sweet.
I just wanted to jump in and say
very sweet. Little side note there. So yeah, it is so important to create a budget and there are so many tools out there on the internet. You could probably even find classes to take. Maybe your church offers some financial help, but get on the same page in creating a budget of how much money is set aside for, your bills, how much for groceries, how much for eating out, how much are you going to spend in those coffee runs on the way to work every day? Little things like that add up so much. And when you add it up and you look at it on paper, it can be shocking. And it can tell a lot about where your money is going. So creating a budget together is super important. And that takes a lot of compromise and a ton of communication. You have to talk about it constantly about, how much money is being sent or, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Delegated for, a clothing budget or a food budget or restaurants. And are we talking like we're eating at the local fast food place, or are we going to go to a nice, sit down, dine in restaurant, that sort of thing. But it takes a lot of communication and compromise because, if you're not used to living on a budget and then you decide you're going to do it, it can be really, really easy to say, it's okay. We'll just go ahead and eat out again tonight. But maybe you don't really have it. And maybe you have to just, look at each other and say, no, let's not do it. Or maybe, a compromise. So a compromise like that, where you're kind of compromising with yourself that you'd rather stick to the budget, or maybe you're compromising with each other over where you want that money to be spent. So it's just, I think that is just one of the biggest things that a couple can do. Proverbs 21:5 says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. So do you want to have profit or do you want to have poverty? How are you going to plan your money and budget, the money that you make? So just really, really, really let that be a goal of yours, a focus of yours to create a budget, to communicate in good ways, to really listen to each other in order to, plan where your money's going to go so that you can not, I don't know, what am I trying to say? So that you can stay out of debt. That's what I wanted to say.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
We don't like debt.
No.
That is dumb. That's what I think.
Debt is dumb.
Dave Ramsey says that.
Oh, does he say that? Debt is
dumb.
Yes.
Cash is king is another thing.
Is that what he says?
Yes,
yes.
He does.
Yes.
All right. I really wanted to talk about this next one because, well, I'm just going to say it. So embracing each other's strengths. The reason I wanted to be the one to talk about this is because I am a spreadsheet nerd. And
oh, gracious. Is he ever?
Yes. So finances and money are just something that I do enjoy working with, and I think it's because of my love of spreadsheets, which sounds really silly, but
I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah.
That's one less thing for me to do. I love it.
Yes. So I handle pretty much the spreadsheet that balances the budget and keeps track of everything. But I will say our communication is completely clear on this. It's transparent at any time.
Absolutely.
If you wanted to say, hey, can I take a look at that? Sure. Within 5 seconds, I'd have it open. And also, when it comes to I feel like I might be going a little off tangent here, but when it comes to the bank accounts, you have the usernames and passwords and you can jump in there, although typically you don't really do that, but if you need to, you can. So,
right.
So, so embracing each other's strengths. And I would say your strength, obviously, is being
the spender.
Well, what I was going to say is the frugal spender. How about that?
The frugal spender. I like that.
You're always looking for bargains, and
totally.
And then you pay more attention to like, say for example, we go out to a restaurant and we get an appetizer and a couple of dinners, and you'll I'll just get the receipt and I'll just be ready to pay it. And you'll be like, hold on here. Let's take a look. Let's
Is
make sure.
everything
Is
right?
everything here?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we've been overcharged. Sometimes we've even been undercharged, and we
fess up.
yeah,
Of
we
course.
do. I mean, because we want to be honest. And
Yes.
so, yeah. So anyway, that's your strength, is you
Oh,
pay
thanks.
attention to
The
the
details like
details
that.
when we are out and about. I seem
Oh.
to pay attention to the
Mm.
details on the spreadsheet. So
That's true.
maybe we
That's
both have
true.
a strength in paying attention to details, just in different ways.
I think so. I think it's really good to focus on what your strengths are, and if, like Brian said, if one of you's good with doing the money, maybe it's not a spreadsheet, maybe it's another way, then go for it.
Yeah.
And then, like he said, he always fills me in on what the money looks like. So that goes back to the previous point of communication.
Yeah.
So something else that you want to do, since I'm not looking at the spreadsheet every day, but Brian is, we have to set a financial date and check in. That sounds fancy. Basically, it's just a regular check in with each other of like, how much money do we have to get us through the end of the month? I always come back to this, Brian, but remember when I wasn't working, I was in school, and you were like, just want to let you know, we only have $88 in the bank until I get paid in 3 weeks. Or 2 weeks, whatever it was, but it was like, whoa. It was.
Was it ever that bad? Wow.
It was like, it was around $80 left, I think.
For
maybe
three?
it was,
Couple of weeks?
I think maybe 2 weeks.
Okay. Wow.
I don't know. It was basically ramen noodles.
Yikes. Okay.
Ramen noodle town is what it was. And that meant you're not going clothing shopping or shoe shopping and no movies, and we're going to eat in a lot, and we're going to make do. And we did. And, so you want to have these check-ins with each other, and just to let each other know where you're at, and maybe a bill that's coming up, I don't know, Brian, what are some of those big bills that you don't pay every month, but like every couple of months? It's like,
well, there's like the car taxes are once a year.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah. See, y'all, I don't even know that stuff.
Right.
Brian is my financial guru.
Yeah.
But yeah, stuff like that. So he'll tell me like, hey, we've got this coming up and this is how much it's going to cost. So X amount of money's going to that. So we're going to cut back on this. So
although full disclosure, I'm not as good as you say I am with the once a year bills. It's usually like, oh, hey, honey, we just got this in the mail. And yeah, so that actually, as we're talking, I'm thinking probably need to get better with those yearly bills.
Yeah.
So
Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. So just to kind of summarize this point, come together on your finances, check in with each other about what the money is, slated for, and anything that might be coming up. Yeah, just checking in.
Yep. I love that verse because it always reminds me of this quote. I don't know where it came from, but maybe you all have heard it. It's alone you can run faster, together you can run farther. Basically meaning like, yeah, if I don't have you alongside of me, checking on me, doing checks and balances, yeah, I can run ahead and get things done very quickly. But there's probably going to be a problem with money if, only one of us is running. If we're both running together, we can run farther. So anyway. All right, let's talk about getting wise counsel. There's 2 places that I want you to get wise counsel from. The second one that I'm going to mention is much more important than this first one, but this first one's very important, and it is that getting counsel from others. So if you're struggling at all in your finances with money, then seek out, maybe there's a couple that that's doing very well. Maybe they both have very good jobs and maybe they're taking care of their money in a good way, and you can just kind of tell from just their character and how they interact with one another and what they do, and seek them out.
That's such a good point.
Yep.
It's such a good thing to do. If you need help, don't be ashamed. Go get that help.
Yeah. And you've kind of alluded to it already. There's plenty of great professionals out there. There's probably even money coaches in your town that you can go to. Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned Dave Ramsey.
He's the guru. We went to Financial Peace University
at
our church, and was it probably an 8-week study on finances? And so yeah, so anything that you can do, if your parents, have been good with money, that might be somebody you want to go to, and
Right.
really anybody, I think would be someone you would want to go to, as long as you feel like they're doing well with their money. And then, this is most important, going to God. When you're struggling, when there's trouble, who do we want to go to? We want to go to the rock, and that is the Lord. And he is the one that we need to build our life on, and he is the one that is going to make our path straight.
Right.
And if we just simply put everything aside, like you always like to say, Heather, grab hands and let's just pray. Let's take this to the Lord.
Yeah.
See what he would have us do. You can pray for a miracle. God, we are in trouble. Please help us do something. Or it might be about wisdom and discernment.
Right.
God, we've got some decisions to make. Help us make these decisions.
Right.
And what better way too, besides prayer, is to get into his word, and really Proverbs, like I've said at the beginning of this episode, get into Proverbs. Lots of awesome wisdom. There was one verse I wanted to mention. It's Proverbs 14:1. It says, "The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down." So again, building is wise, tearing down is foolish, and just remember that. So yeah, seeking others, including the Lord, is extremely important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else, Heather?
Yeah, I think it's just some of the key points that we mentioned. It's so important to understand why you have certain views on money, where that comes from, sharing that with each other, and even embracing those differences. It's not like one is right and one is wrong. It's just different. It's an apple and a banana. They're good, but they're different. So kind of look at your perspectives on money like that, and then seek unity in creating that budget and having those good conversations about your money and how it's going to be spent. Find strength in your perspectives that you have. You're unique because you're very unique. You're unique people, and just find the strength in that and build upon that. And we hope that you feel more empowered from this as you learn to navigate, like, who's the spender, who's the saver, and what that means in the dynamics of your own marriage. And something else that I want to leave with you is just to remind you to go to the website and download the Goal Setting 301 Financial Goals Workbook. That also comes with the comes with the blog article. And I should know this, but I don't. So Brian, are they able to go to the website and do a search or easily find the blog post that went with it?
Yeah, I will put the link to the blog post in the show notes.
Okay.
So yes,
You're
they will
awesome
have that
like
as well.
that.
So in addition to being able to get the
Yes.
workbook, they can also read the blog post as well.
Right. And the blog post is going to kind of help you determine as a couple what your financial goals are in your marriage. So yeah, it can really help you become more in tune with each other, and trust can be built as you navigate, money within your marriage. And this can draw you closer together as a couple, because I like to come back to this because it's got you communicating, it's got you talking, and that's where it's at. So we just thank you so much for tuning in, and just appreciate you taking the time to listen to us talk to you, and want you to stay tuned for more episodes. If you have any thoughts or questions you want to share with us, we'd love to hear from you, and I hope you all have a blessed week.